In 1954, the United States Supreme Court had passed the Brown v. Board of Education law. It is a case in which the court declared that laws in each state separating black and white students in public schools were unconstitutional. Although the Supreme Court allowed segregation in schools, schools that were in the South never abided by the new order. Within the same year, on September 8th, Ruby Bridges was born, unaware of the struggles that she would come to face beginning just at 6 years old.
In 1960, it was the era of the Civil Rights Movement. Famous leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and many more influential people were pivotal leaders during this era. From the refusal of her rightful seat, to the inspiring speech, and to the empowerment and unity of African Americans, this was a time of change. For the fact that Ruby Bridges was a young and upcoming leader, she still made a lasting and powerful impact on the American educational system. Prior to her acceptance to William Frantz Elementary, the school district created entrance exams for African American students to see whether they could compete academically at an all-white school. Ruby was one of 4 African American students that passed the test.
Initially, her father was reluctant about letting Ruby attend an all-white school because he was in fear of his daughter facing angry protesters against integration. But her mother believed, in order to let Ruby receive a better education, she needed to attend William Frantz Elementary.
On November 14, 1960, precautions were taken in defense of the Bridges family for people protesting anti-integration. When Ruby was being escorted to school, large crowds of people were gathered in front of the school yelling and throwing objects.
What do you remember hearing?
Oh my, I remember them chanting 2, 4, 6, 8. We don't want to integrate.
In the midst of all the madness, barricades were set up and police officers were on the watch. Ruby's daring spirit was remarkable, even to Deputy Marshal Charles Burks. He stated, "For a little girl 6-year-old going to a strange school with 4 strange deputy marshals, a place she had never been before, she showed a lot of courage. She never cried, she didn't whimper, she just marched along like a little soldier. We were all very proud of her."
Ruby and her mother were greeted by her teacher, Miss Henry, to find the school empty, as the students were being taken out by their parents due to the new change. The beginning of the integration was tense. Pro-segregationists took protesting not only outside of the school, but also in the streets. It resulted in a time of division. White people assaulted black people, and black people fought back. More police officers were asked to stay on guard with all the riots that were happening. If you want to see the sunshine, you have to weather the storm. By the end of the week, the riots had ended and the protesting had subsided. By the time Ruby had gained popularity in the South, she had also gained popularity around the nation. People who had heard about Ruby on the news sent letters, gifts, and money.
By the second week of school, Ruby was the only student in her classroom, alone with her teacher, Miss Henry. While in the classroom, Miss Henry told Ruby, "It's not easy for people to change once they have gotten used to living a certain way. Some of them don't know any better, and they're afraid, but not everyone is like that." Miss Henry influenced Ruby's education in a positive light. Ruby stated that she was one of the most loving people she had ever known. The greatest lesson that she learned that year in Miss Henry's class was the lesson Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. tried to teach us all. Never judge people by the color of their skin. God makes each of us unique in ways that go much deeper.
Later on in the school year, the principal of William Frantz was still not willing to have Ruby join the other white students in their classroom, even when Miss Henry mentioned that by law, the school had to integrate students both black and white. Finally, white students came to Miss Henry's class, with Ruby for the part of the day. It was in that time Ruby learned about racism and segregation.
When did you realize that there were people who hated black people? There were people who wanted to do you harm because of what you did to go into this school?
I realized that when I started to hear voices of kids, and I was constantly searching and looking for the kids the whole year. I thought my teacher was ignoring me because I would mention it to her and she never said anything. I since have found out that she was going to the principal and saying that you're breaking the law. The law's now changed and kids can be together, but you're keeping them from Ruby. If you don't allow them to come together, I'm going to report you to the superintendent. So that forced them to allow Mrs. Henry to take me to where the kids were. And when I went, there they were, 4 or 5 kids, not many, sitting there playing. And I was so excited because when you're 6, the most important thing is friends. I didn't care what they looked like. So I went in to sit down to play with them, but a little boy said, "I can't play with you. You know, my mom said not to play with you because you're a nigger." He said that, and I realized that's why there's no kids here. That's what this is all about. It's about me and
Race,
right,
black and white.
the color of my skin. Oh, I think what protected me was the innocence of a child.
Why were you in an empty classroom?
Why was I, the first day maybe everybody was absent, but every day I didn't see them on the playgrounds, and I didn't see them, I wasn't allowed to go to the cafeteria.
You weren't allowed?
No, I could smell the food cooking, but I remember that the kids met in the cafeteria at my old school. So for a long time I thought, well, the kids are in the cafeteria, I can't go because they're threatening to poison me or harm me. They kept screaming that outside. And so the marshals instructed my parents to prepare my lunch and have me eat it at my desk.
During the Civil Rights Movement, Ruby Bridges showed her courageous character as she was the first African American student to attend an all-white school. Not everyone agreed with her actions. Some said that schools should be separated by race, but others wanted desegregated schools. Overall, Ruby Bridges paved the way for races of all kinds to receive an equal opportunity for an education.
Ruby Bridges was a trailblazer for the integration of schools in the South, forcing them to rewrite the typical American educational system, from separate but equal to integrated equality. Amidst all the violent protests, negative light on integration, and non-supporters, she never missed a day of school since November 14th. The reason for integration in school now is because of the brave steps she walked up that day, standing tall as she entered the school. She took a stand not only for herself, but also for all future students of color.